Does your app look basic? I mean, you chose WinUI to get a more modern look, and it is better than WinForms, but it still looks kind of bland. Well, let's talk about how you can style your WinUI app to make it look amazing, but then also cover some best practices from Microsoft about how to make that more manageable and maintainable as new updates come out. I've got an empty WinUI app ready to go for us to test with, and it's already running. There it is, nothing on the screen, so we can start from scratch. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to start with, let's add a stack panel in here. A matter of fact, instead of typing that, I'm going to copy and paste that one and stick it inside it. And then inside that stack panel, I want to put some text boxes. Let's do, if we think about like a contact form, you got a first name, last name, and email. Let's just stick with something like that and say width equals, let's say 150. Let's say the height's going to be 40. Let's say we're going to want a margin of like 0, 10, 0, 0. Give some spacing in between them. Let's say font size even is maybe 20. Make it really big. And then I'm going to add some placeholder text here just so we'll kind of differentiate what fields are what. So let's say this is first name and then close that. And then I'm going to copy and paste those text boxes. And that one's going to be last name, right? And this one is going to be email address. That makes sense. But, email addresses are a little bit longer than names normally. So let's make that a little bit wider at 180. Okay, so if I go over and look at my example, my app that's running, there it is. Hot Reload's got it there for me. And there's my first name, my last name, and email address. The email address we can see is a little bit bigger than the other fields. So let's go in and add a grid with some buttons. And same deal. I'm going to want a margin on that of like 0, 10, 0, 0. Let's give it a width of 400. Make it a little wider. And then I'm going to get 3 columns. What I'm thinking is you'd have like a save button, maybe a cancel button, and maybe even a delete button. But maybe you want to segment that delete button over to the left. Keep it kind of separate from the save so you don't accidentally press it. So I'm going to do grid column definitions. Then say column definition. Say that first one's width is going to be star, so it'll be taking up most of the space. And then column definition, a width of, let's just say 100 for now. And I'm going to put 2 buttons over on that side of the screen. So I'll do 2 of those columns. And let's put in our button. So we've got a button here. We'll say content equals delete. And let's make your width, let's say 80. Your height, we'll make it the same as those text boxes above it, 40. But what we do need is, because this is the delete, we want to say background is red so that it stands out and looks destructive, right? Then foreground equal white so that you can see that on there. And then we'll want 2 other buttons. We'll do the save button. We'll do the cancel button. But we don't need any special styling on the cancel button. It should just be a normal button that our app uses. And the save, let's call it green with a white background. So it's like a primary button that like do this thing. And then we need to specify that we want these to live on the grid. So let's say grid.column equals, and then turn that part of it off. Go 0 and 1, then 2. Go. All right. So I think we save. Yeah. There we go. Our grids, our buttons are a little bit more spaced out. That cancel has kind of like that default cancel button look. This is a little wonky because my override, my colors, it doesn't look right on the hover, right? So we might want to clean that up. But basically, this is working, right? But if you look at this form, holy moly, this is a lot of ugly stuff. Can you imagine, like, if you had a form with a lot more fields or multiple pages with their own forms? This could get unruly really quickly, especially like say for this delete button and the save button where you want like a primary button color or a different color for like a warning button kind of thing where it looks different than the base button. This is unmanageable. You don't want to be copying that delete button to every page that you need a delete button or some kind of warning on. Now, this is terrible. This is called inline styling and it works, but please don't do this. Not in the real world. If you're doing something fast, dirty, ugly prototype, okay. But don't do this in a real app because it's not maintainable at all. It's just going to drive you crazy the rest of your life. So, what's the step we can take beyond this to make it a little bit nicer? Well, this is where resource dictionaries come in. And the nice thing about resource dictionaries is I'm about to show you how to implement one, but understand you can create a resource dictionary for any framework element that you want. Outside of the window, pages, any kind of grid, stack panels, all those things, even the buttons themselves can have their own dictionary. I'm going to simplify that a little bit. So on this stack panel up here with our text boxes, there's no reason for us to define these same things over and over again. So let's up here say stack panel dot resources. And then I'm going to say, I want to create a new style. We're getting hip. And then we're going to say your target type is a text box, not a block, a box. And then just to make sure, I want to show you something really quick. This is something very important you're going to want to recognize. We're going to add in that setters, okay? And then setter would be like the property we want to update. We want to update the width, let's say. The width we used was 150, right? So value is going to be 150. Well, in that one, I'm going to copy that a few times because we also want the height. We'll make it 40. And we also want a margin. And we'll make it that 01000. And then font size, right? So another setter with a property of font size. I love the IntelliSense for this. And then value equals 20. Okay, so we've got that setter. So then we ought to be able to just take off all those attributes. Now, let me take it off this one. Now that, remember, the email address was a little bit longer. So what this is going to do is override. So this is the first lesson in styling here is overrides. So you can have a resource dictionary that is overridden by an inline style. And you can actually have resource dictionaries that kind of are based on or inherit from other styles and basically override each other all the way down, adding more functionality or more design to that object. So if we go look at our app now, the buttons look exactly the same. Email address is still 180. And actually, if we take off that override, go look at the app, we'll see that email address has gotten smaller now. So that does override. So, hey, that looks great. This is better, right? This is better code, better looking management. You can imagine how, as you're keeping this up, this is much better than the inline. Still not great, though, right? I mean, we could do the same thing on the grid. Like I said, any framework element we can add this on. So grid.resources, we could say style, target type is button. And then we want a setter on it. And we want to say property equals, not that. Property equals, what did I say? 80, I think. Width. Value is 80. And then we can have that a couple times. We'll need one for the height. Need one for, well, maybe that's it. Just those two. So we'll say height. And then we'll say 40 on that one. And then we can come down here and take off the width and the height on all of these, which is fantastic. And if we go over and look at our app, it still looks the same. It looks a little bit different. It looks a little wonky because you get these square buttons where like a normal default style for a button is kind of rounded corners. You can tell like the mouse over is not as nice. But that's because we define new styles on these that are kind of erasing the default behaviors. They're not overriding by default. We actually have to say, hey, this style is based on that default style. So let's go back up here to the text box and say, hey, this is based on, and luckily, there's static resource. Pretty much every, I think maybe every framework element has a unique style associated with it. And it's also got a standard way of naming those things. So you just start with default. This IntelliSense knows that I'm talking about a text box, so default text box style. The same would be true for a button, so default button style or default grid style. So we got that, and then let's go add that to this button too and say based on static resource, default button style, hit save, come back over. Look, we've got our rounded corners again, and we're looking more normal. We're gonna get all the effects and the highlighting, like the line underneath the text box going blue now where it didn't. Let's make it better because this is better than inline, but you can still imagine, like I've got the styles for this still inline for the red and green. So let's make that a little nicer and say, hey, I want a new style. This is going to be like a warning button style. And we'll say your target type is a button and your X key is going to be warning button style. And then we're going to say, I want a setter on you. Property is going to be background and value is going to be red. We also need one for the foreground. So property, foreground, value equals white. Okay. Now, this style doesn't have the same width and height properties of this one. So we want to say on this one, on the warning style button, we want to say you are based on that style that I defined right above you. But we have to have an X key on that style to do that. The problem in this scenario is if I were to add an X key on this style and say this is going to be my base button style, that's fine. And then we can go and add it on here as based on static resource, base button style. That's probably behind my head. There you go. That'll work. And if we go look at our app though, wait a minute. We're losing some stuff here, right? We've lost the size. We've still got that default look, but everything's smaller. What happened? We lost this style here. What we named base button style is no longer applying to just all buttons overall. So let's see if we can fix that. Easiest way is to say, hey, let's create a new style. Its target type is button as well. And it should be based on static resource, base button style. That looks right. So this style is going to override all buttons, period. That's like the base level. It's basically the default. So the cancel, which doesn't have any kind of special style associated with it, is fine. You know what? That's one reason it was looking wrong too. We didn't add that style to our button. This one is actually setting up the base style for our button. And we basically are deriving from that to create like the default style that applies to everything without having to use style. But here on this warning, you say style equals static resource warning button style. And now when we go look, that one's got the right colors. Everything's working on it. It now has the rounded edges like we expect. And we can take off this. Let's create another style for that. We'll call this one primary button style. And we'll make it green background. And then on our save button, we'll say style equals static resource primary button style. And we're back to normal. Everything looks right, but now we've gotten all those inline styles off there and we can keep it a little bit more clean and manageable. Now we can all agree that this is more manageable than those inline styles, but it's still not very manageable because we're going to have those same kind of warning buttons and We're going to have text boxes on other pages. We're going to have primary buttons. We're going to have all kinds of stuff on other pages of our app, other controls. And we want all of those to inherit from these styles that we're creating without having to go in and create resources on every grid or stack panel we want to put them on. So let's take this up a notch. Now we could bring up our app XAML and in here, add those styles in this location. So if I come out, I steal those button styles out and I put them in my app XAML and I can get rid of that grid resources. And if I come up here and take those text box styles out, that stack panel resources, come back over here and plug those in, save that, save that. Everything looks just the same. Now this is already nicer because I have all my styles in one place that are accessible all through my application where I can reference them with IntelliSense to say warning button style or primary button style. Even the ones I don't have to specify, like just the text box default look or the buttons default look, those are all working just from the app XAML. But you can imagine, like if you have a huge app with lots of different styles and lots of different controls, this file is going to get just unwieldy. You're not going to want to try and keep up with this like that. So is there a better way to do it? Spoiler alert, I wouldn't have asked if there wasn't. So let's get to that. Let's go create a style folder in our project or styles. Let's do styles. We're going to add a new item and I'm going to say, give me a resource dictionary. Actually say resource. There's my resource dictionary. I'm going to call this one button styles.xaml. And I'm going to leave it empty for a second and go create another one. And you'll never guess what we're going to call this. Yeah, you got it. Text box styles. All right, we've got those. Then I'm going to come into my app XAML and I'm going to take out that text box style there. And I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to go take out those button styles and paste them in button styles. Okay, we've got that. We've got the text ones there. And now, up here in my app XAML, I'm going to merge dictionaries in. Those are resource dictionaries for our buttons or text boxes or whatever else you're going to need. But here we can say, okay, let's merge in, let's say resource dictionary source equals, look at that IntelliSense. I want the button styles brought in. Thank you. I want another resource dictionary with a source. You save that. Sometimes on these, we have to restart the app. Luckily, it's not running for me. But you'll notice over here, I don't have any resource dictionaries in my actual window here. Nothing specified on stack panels or grids. They got some inline styles there, but that's okay. But I'm still referencing that warning button style on those two buttons. And I don't have any style on cancel or our text boxes so that they're going to just run to the default. So now we think maybe we're ready to run this thing. So let's do it. Let's build the app and get us going. Oh, no. Well, what happened? Well, I'm going to give you a quick run through of what's going on here. When we're loading this thing, we're loading in those base styles of those XAML controls. The default text box style, right? The one we were basing our style on over in text box styles. That style is not being found. It has to do with the way that the compiler is going through and merging all these things in together. If one gets loaded before the other, it can't find it. So in our case, I'm going to copy this, show you how to resolve it. It's throwing up that error because of this default text box style. I'm going to paste that section in there, but then take out everything except it merging in those XAML controls. And now, hopefully, those styles will be available when it tries to use that based on. And there we go. There's our app. Our styles are all there. Everything's working as we expect. If we were to go into, let's say, our main window and add a style onto cancel to say, let's say background is yellow. Save it. When we bring up our app, we'll see that the background changed. It overrode it, just like when we had it in the resources of its parent object or the app itself. It still works exactly how we'd expect. You just got to remember that one gotcha that you don't always have to deal with. But if you do hit that, just look through the error, find out what style it can't find, and add that snippet of code from your app XAML into the top of that one to... Oh snap, I've got to interrupt your regularly scheduled programming because the team at Microsoft just released WinApp SDK 1.7 that fixes the bug I just showed you. Literally, like hours before this video went live, it came out. So what does that mean? Disregard that whole section. When you include your styles in your app XAML's merged dictionaries, it's going to import those default styles just fine. You won't need the workaround of injecting the other thing in your style page. None of that's, just go build, design, live your life. Good luck to you. Back to the video. It's really that simple. Now, the team at Microsoft would tell you, hey, try to refrain from doing too much crazy styling because as new updates come out to those controls, you want it to always look like a native Windows app. But we know you. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Make your app your own. And we're here to support you while you do it. Are you building a native Windows app, especially a WinUI one? I want to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. I love GitHub repositories. And if there's a WinUI topic you want us to cover or other client platform topic you want us to cover, let us know in the comments and we'll create a video for you. Until next time.